Welcome to the Kind of Basketball Talk, episode 2. Today I have my guy S with me. He works for the Score, big Raptors fan. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter. Link will be in the description below for all of his social media stuff. The Score, you can go check out some of his work over there. And as always, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I make content about the NBA. Pretty self-explanatory. Like the video. Likes go a long way. Follow all my social medias. Link to everything for both S's channel and my channel will be in the description below. But S, why don't you introduce yourself? Kind of talk about what you do.
For sure. Yeah. I'm a content creator, NBA content creator for the Score. If you guys know it, it's a great app that we kind of use on the daily. I use on the daily. But it's also a YouTube channel as well that you can check out. We do a bunch of content, whether it be just sports in general or the NBA.
Yeah. So again, that'll be in the description below. Go check them out. I watched a few review stuff, things before. I watched the DeMar DeRozan one, and I
Nice.
think I watched something. I think I forget the other one I watched. It was one of the earlier ones I remember, but go check it out. They make great stuff over there, like really high quality stuff. So
Appreciate
I,
you.
yeah, one of the first questions I always ask everyone, and I'm going to be asking everyone moving forward, is who is your current favorite NBA player? Like in the league right now, like who's your favorite player? Like and why?
Does it have to be outside of the team that I currently support, or do
No, it
you want me
doesn't.
to?
No, I had a
No.
Sixers fan say Embiid last time, so yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough, fair enough. I would probably say Kyle Lowry then.
yeah,
Kyle Lowry is easily my.
yeah,
It's no question just because of the way that he plays. He likes to play with a tenacity, an
mhm,
aggression, just an overall. It's something that I appreciate from him as a basketball player because when I was playing basketball and like trying to make it in high school and college and whatnot, there was this attitude and mentality that an undersized
mhm,
guard has to have, and
yeah,
he embodies that. He embodies the undersized point guard
mhm,
mentality. So, yeah, something I've related to. So,
yeah. That makes sense. I think if I had a lot of Raptors guests on moving forward, because I think I have Samson on next time, and
nice.
I think, yeah, I think a lot of them because like they just all seem to love him. It's like it's awesome because like, people forget early on in his career he bounced around like a few teams. Then he finally kind of found his home like late in his career. Like it's kind of wild to think like he's gonna be like what 35 years old and like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like that. He kind of just feels like he's only 28, and that's something I've always said about him. Like it just
Right.
doesn't make sense. Like he shouldn't be this close to LeBron. Is like that's
Hmm.
the play. Like I would
Right.
say.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
he's a late bloomer, which is it's similar
yeah,
to how Chauncey Billups was in his career.
yeah,
Like it took him a little while to get to the point where he was, but then once he got there, he was pretty much
yeah.
competent and elite for
Oh
a really
no.
long time. Yeah,
And Chauncey's probably gonna. I think he's gonna be a Hall of Famer, or if
for
he isn't
sure.
already.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
Lowry's gonna be a Hall of Famer as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I really like Kyle Lowry, even though he is on the Raptors, and like I'm a Celtics fan. Like I don't let that stuff. Like I don't let that barrier kind of get in the way of things.
Yeah, I
Like
agree, man. I'm
so
on
it's
I'm
like,
on the same boat as you. I like
well,
I'll get in on the whole fan stuff on Twitter and sometimes I'll have back and forths, but I have nothing but respect for pretty much every single player on the Celtics. Like I love Jason Tatum, love Jaylen
yeah,
Brown. Those are just they're
yeah,
awesome players to watch. You know, so
yeah. And I think that's something like when I was younger, that was a big thing for me. Was just like growing up like Boston because they like I was a Celtics fan. I'm a Celtics fan and a Red Sox fan, which means I'm a part of like the two biggest rivalries of like in all sports because of like Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, and then
mhm.
Celtics and Lakers. But like even then, it's just like those are like the only two. It's just like a complete hatred rival. But every other rivalry, I'm like, I'm not gonna let this get in the way of me anymore. Like it's just kind of stupid. Like it's
Right.
just
Yeah.
like stuff happens to what it does. I do want to talk about because you're a Raptors fan. You guys had a horrible year for your standards compared to the previous few years. Obviously, I have to probably bleep that out because YouTube doesn't like that. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um,
The pandemic, you can call it
yeah,
the pan yeah.
the
Yeah.
pandemic, playing in Florida, which I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I'll be quite honest with you. Um, and just
Yeah,
like
for
injuries as well. Like like what? Like, what do you think like they should do moving forward? Like, do you think like the season like told you anything, or it's just like it's a bad situation? Like, we'll be back next year. Like,
Yeah, I think it's even outside of a fan perspective, like just from a front office perspective, from a Messiah Ujiri and Bobby Webster's perspective, I think listening to them talk about it, you could hear that they were also somewhat unsure of how much they can take away from the season and how much they would be just in general, like how much you can take away from the season and move forward into next season
yeah,
is a crucial part of the process, because I don't think you can take a lot from their performances of individual players. You can
Mhm.
maybe address some of the issues that were apparent this year, especially at the center spot, especially when it comes to creating in the half court. I think those are situations, those are kind of errors and roster fit things that you can address moving forward.
yeah. Uh,
But the record doesn't. Sorry, go ahead. You're good.
no, no, you said what were you saying?
No, I was just saying the record doesn't really indicate how good of a team this is. The point differential obviously
Mhm.
was something that was funny
Yeah,
for among Raptors fans moving forward, but I don't think this is something that you can kind of. This season is a blip, man. To
yeah,
be completely honest with you, it does feel like a blip, especially when it comes to moving into Tampa Bay. You only have 2 weeks'
mhm.
notice to get everything relocated there, to set
Yeah,
up a practice facility and a ballroom,
mhm.
to be able to try to get guys in rhythm. Some guys were living in the hotel for the first 3 or 4 months of the season, so
Mhm.
it's hard to take away really a lot of the individual performances of these guys. But when
Mhm.
it comes to actual roster construction, I think that's something that you can take away. You
Yeah.
can kind of analyze.
Mhm. And obviously, you guys have top 10 lottery odds this year, which is not something I thought. Like, I think like for the first like couple months of the season, I'm like, because like when I saw you guys in the lottery, when I was doing my mock drafts, like every time I was like, I made a mock draft, I'm like, oh, they probably won't be here by the end of the year. Like, like Indiana was another team like that, where it's like they probably aren't going to be here
Right.
when it's all said and done. Golden State obviously was another team. It's like they probably won't be here, and then obviously that. But you guys have the seventh odds in the lottery. Do you have like any names that like you would be interested in? Like I know everyone would want Cade. Like yeah, like I know that, but like realistically,
Right.
in
Yeah.
like that seven range, like what other
For
is there
sure.
someone that you would like?
I am, and I've said this since the moment I started recruiting, like not recruiting, but just watching those guys. I
Mhm.
am a huge fan of the Tennessee guys. Love Keon
Yeah.
Johnson, love Jaden
Hmm.
Springer. Those are my guys, and I think Raptors fit wise, I guess what works for them best this year, I would probably say and lean towards Jaden Springer,
Hmm.
just because I think he embodies a lot of qualities and tendencies a Lowry does.
Hmm.
He may not be that great of a creator for himself and others just yet, but he'll get to
Yeah.
that point at some point. No, I love Jaden Springer, man, and I'm pretty sure you love Jaden Springer as
Yeah, I
well, right?
do.
I remember
I
seeing
have
that.
him in that 3 to 5 range, my book, which is way higher than anyone else does.
Right.
I just think he's a bit ahead of the development curve. Like people, you have to remember with him is he's super young for that class. Like he's younger than a few of the guys in the current like senior class in high school. He's younger than some of those guys as well. Like, he's super young. He's ahead of the development curve. Like I remember I think it was his junior year. He was at Geico Nationals. He was on a team with Josh Green, who was a first round pick, Armando Bacot, top 20 player in the senior class, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, really good player at Villanova. Like these were like three McDonald's All Americans. He was probably the youngest player. Yeah, no, he was the youngest player in that starting five, and he was the best player on that team that won nationals. Like people it's like that's just rare. And like again, he's just a bit ahead of that development curve. Like, what if you put him in if I put him in this year's high school class, he would have been like a top three guy for me. And
Right.
even now, like I moved him from like 3 to 5. I moved Green and Suggs stuff, but just a little bit. Because
Right.
the more I watched him, the more I thought his game was a little bit raw. But again, he is only 18, so that's
Mm-hmm.
who I like.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I think for the Raptors and where they're at, and the looming
Mhm.
situation of where Kyle is going to be going this summer, I think that's a guy that can come in and not only not necessarily contribute right away, but a guy you can develop and mold
Mhm.
into something that could
Yeah.
be a long term player for you. So I love him. I'm in love. I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with Jaden Springer. He's my pick if I had to pick
Yeah.
anybody in that 6, 7, 8
Yeah.
range, whatever
Mhm.
we're gonna end up being. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And obviously, if you get a top 3 pick, like you know, like the guys.
Oh yeah.
Even if I'm not as high on some of those guys, but like, like obviously, if you get the number 1 pick, you're picking Cade. Like no matter, I always say it's like every team in the league, if they got the first pick, they would take Cade Cunningham just because like he has so much versatility and he's so like skilled. Um, I know like a lot of fans like if they get like a top 3 pick, they want Mobley. I've noticed that with Raptors fans, which makes sense. I haven't heard a lot about like Suggs or Green
Hmm.
necessarily. I know that I have some peers that aren't as high on those guys as well, but
Yeah.
it's you can't go wrong in the top 10 unless like you massively reach, which I don't. There aren't many players that I think like are these like high ceiling, low floor that like I would view as like a big reach. Like if you were at 7, like I would consider like Zaire Williams, who's like one of my favorite players in this draft. He is like super high upside kind of guy. Toronto, like I would love to see like one of those high upside guys go there as well. Like those like kind of like you need to be in the right situation kind of guys. Like
Right.
and you develop them properly. Like Kuminga's like kind of like that for me. Zaire's definitely like that for me. Like I would have loved to see like an Alexei Pokusevsky from last year. Like I would have loved to see him in Toronto. Like
Yeah. The develop. Well, the thing is, OKC also has that development. Like
yeah.
they know how to develop their guys.
Mm.
There's 3 or 4 teams in the NBA. There's the Memphises of the world, although we won't talk about Brendan Clark's jump shot. Well, there's Miami, there's OKC, and then there's Toronto,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent San Antonio as well. But like those are the
I
teams that know how to
yeah.
develop players, right?
I would say that, yeah. I would throw Denver in there as well. Kind of throw
Mhm.
Denver a little bit because like I like what they're doing with Zeke Naji. I wish they would play him earlier, but I like what they're doing. MPJ obviously.
Yeah.
We'll see with Bol, but like they developed some guys like the way they developed Jokic, like
Hmm.
and that you can say it's a bit of an outlier, but like there's also other players that they developed that can back it up, like Jamal Murray, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Will
Guys like
Barton, I think,
well,
is another version of it. Yeah.
Gary Harris to a certain extent, like
Yeah.
like they develop guys to at least be like competent NBA players. Um, like, and that's always important to have with these young players because like I always feel like people forget like these guys are like 18, 19 years old when they enter the league. Like structure's important for them,
Hmm.
and I always feel like that is something that gets a bit
Yeah.
underrated with players. It's just like like Phoenix is fine now. Like they are now, like they're a great spot now. But like a few years ago, like they were a horrible situation. And I feel like if guys like Josh Jackson and Dragon Bender, maybe went to a better situation, maybe things end up differently because they had talent. It was just that like you go to such a dysfunctional place. I commend, like Colin Sexton dude's going for developing in Cleveland. Like that has not been a great situation, but they've, shown they can play. Okuro's been awesome there as well. Like,
Right.
you just need that. Like you have to understand they're still technically like quote unquote, and it's kind of awkward for me to say kid because I'm around their age. But
Right.
you know, like they are like they enter the league, they're basically kids still. Like
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're on the nail, man. And when you think about guys that may have gone to the wrong situation and would have been viewed differently, think about like an Andrew Wiggins. Like if
yeah.
Wiggins hadn't gone to
Mhm.
Minnesota, where in my opinion some careers go to die, it really isn't. It's unfortunate because he could have been a completely different player.
Yeah.
You think about other players in certain situations, even as early as last year, right?
Mhm.
How would we be looking at LaMelo Ball if he went second to the Warriors instead of
Mhm.
going third? How would we be looking at James Wiseman, vice versa, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
hard
see that.
discussion to have because it's kind of a what if, but at the
Mhm.
same time, being in the right spot, being selected by the right team is almost as the foundational skills you have as a prospect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, some players can overcome it. Like, I think like guys like Zion, I think Lamelo would be able to overcome it because I think Lamelo was like the one rookie that was able to handle really what they did to him and Charlotte early. Because like, remember they were like they bring him off the bench, like,
Right.
and like they were starting Devontae Graham over him, even though Graham like had a horrible start to the season, and then like LaMelo was getting pulled for like a few mistakes in the game. Meanwhile, Devontae Graham was consistently playing like 30 to 35 minutes, despite him
Right.
playing horrible. Like not many rookies would have been able to like survive that, but like he's so well traveled, and he mentions it like you know being around the world going around the world from like the time he was like 15 to like 19, and like living in a bunch of different places, like living in California, living in Australia, living in like, I think it was like, I think it was like New Zealand or something like that. I forget what league it was, but he's been all over the place. Ohio, like he's lived in so many places that like he's grown up quicker and he's just more equipped to handle a situation like that. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like, he's had his trial and errors like earlier on. Like he's had like the media like kind of like scrutinize him at a young age that he's just used to it now, that he can just handle situations better. But some players just take time, and I think some teams need to be patient. Like that's why I'm kind of worried about Warriors with Wiseman a bit, just
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're starting to get a bit impatient with him, um, which isn't fair to him, by the
It
way, at
isn't.
all.
No,
Because like he
no,
didn't
you're
ask
right.
to get drafted into that situation. Like, and that's true with all these players. This isn't like the NFL where you can like manipulate where you go in the draft. Like you go where you get drafted. Like you can't really
Right.
manipulate it.
Yeah,
So
no, you're right, and it's a tough situation where Wiseman is at, man, because the kid is trying to win right now, and he's just not at that point where he can contribute to winning. Like he's just
yeah,
not at the point, and I don't fault him. I just fault the Warriors and the front
yeah.
office for choosing that direction, right?
Well, I always thought about like you knew he only played 3 games in college, and most of his stuff was like pre-NBA. And like I always talk about this, like every time he comes up, I'm like, if you watched his pre-NBA stuff, like if you seriously watched like his high school, his AAU, which I think is important because he was playing on one of the best AAU circuits in the world. Like if you watch that stuff, like you wouldn't have viewed him as highly. But a lot of people just didn't watch that stuff, and they were tantalized by like the idea of what he could be. And I think that's why he
Right.
went a little bit high, way higher than he probably stood up. Like I would have said like 8 to like 15 range is where I would have taken him because I did
Mm-hmm.
think he has potential, but like there was a lot of work with him, and I feel like that there's a whole reason why he was ranked so highly in high school. I'm not gonna get into that because like that's like stuff that like I really shouldn't be talking about because based off what those people told me. But
Right.
uh, like you can get an idea of if you know anything about like, scandals, you get the idea of
Oh
what
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think again, like you said, like it is important to them. It's like important to like get a young player in a great situation because you understand like they should still be in college right now. Most of these guys, and it's why again you always see like the like later first round picks that are older. They end up contributing more right away because they're just more ready. But that doesn't mean they'll always be better in the long run either.
Yeah, lower ceiling, right? Lower
Yeah,
ceiling. You can't get to that point. And I think that's going back, I guess, to the Raptors. They've had a history of drafting guys who are 2 to 3 year guys, even 4 year guys, right? The guys
yeah.
that have finished school. I
Pascal.
think now OG, even Malachi Flynn, Fred VanVleet,
Mhm.
all these guys, Chris Boucher, they're all multi-year guys. And I think now I would hope that they kind of change that trajectory because that
Mhm.
drafting guys that are 2 to 3 year players, that limits the ceiling as to how good they're going to be,
Yeah.
right? Whereas like let's say
Mhm.
a Jaden Springer, that's a
Yeah.
different scenario. You can develop and mold him. He's a little bit
Yeah.
more of clay that you can kind of fix to what you
Mhm.
want, right?
Yeah. And I think it also depends on where you're drafting. Like if you draft like mid to late first round, you can draft those older players. If you're drafting in the top 10, you might want like they have to show something like to draft like a 3 or 4 year player. Like 2 years, maybe I can see. Like James Booknight's an example of that. Like
Right.
he's a late lottery guy for me. Um, but it's even like because like there were some sophomores that are younger than some of the freshmen. Like there's always going to be that. But like the older guys, like late first, but like you try to get the upside guy, unless like there's something. Unless it depends on situation. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It worked with like Rui Hachimura, who I think was like a
Right.
redshirt sophomore. It worked with kind of worked with Buddy Hield, depending on your perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm not saying it can't work, but it doesn't work a lot of the time. Like look at Obi Toppin. Like
Right. One guy that is kind of, I don't know if he's a question mark, but a guy that I'm interested to see how he translates is Davion Mitchell, and he's a couple of years in too, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where he falls, how he fits in, and what his ceiling really is. He could be a guy who could probably contribute quick, but what kind of ceiling does he have to his game?
Yeah, and like, and those again, like we mentioned, like at the start with Lowry, it's just like there's going to be guys that like are late bloomers, and it's possible, but they aren't norms necessarily. Like I compare it to the NFL, where it's like, yeah, Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round, yeah, Tom Brady was drafted in the 5th round. That's not a norm. Like that's an outlier. You can't base your whole argument off that. You can't draft a guy in the 5th round and say he's going to be the next best player in the sport. Like you can't just do stuff like that. Which is true, and it's a bit of like it kind of comes off as a bit narcissistic. Like you can't be optimistic just because like something else happened, but like don't get your hopes up for it. Like you can always have in the back of your mind, but like don't get your hopes up completely for stuff like that, just because it'll lead you to disappointment more times than not. Anything, which is always something you don't want to do too much. I had Kyle Lowry on my note too, but we already already talked about him. Do you have any interest outside of basketball? Like, I do want to talk about that because that's always going to be a big part of this. Like, like TV shows, movies, like other activities. Like, I always think like you probably get this as a basketball creator, like a content creator, where it's like I edit a video all day. Like I don't want to watch basketball at the end of the day or watch other basketball YouTube. It's just like when you like had to do all that. So like, what do you do like to kind of like make sure you don't burn out on basketball? Like that's always something that's important. Like what do you do?
Well, there's two things I do. One is a little bit more private to myself. I like to make music. I like to record and make music. I'm actually waiting to get a cool new setup so I can actually start recording again. And then one thing that I'm actually pursuing is acting. So I'm trying to become somewhat of an actor here in Toronto. We'll see how that goes. But those are two ways. Like personally, I when I call content creator, like, it's such a wide range of things. Even though I do MBA right now, I have so many different lanes that I can fill and do music, acting, whatever, right? So it's a combination of all these things that makes what a content creator is. I love every portion of that. So whether it be, being on camera, acting, whether it be trying to edit and make things towards music and whatnot, it's all a combination. So I enjoy doing a lot of acting and a lot of music. Those are the two things
That's
I love
really
to
cool.
do. So, yeah, man.
Yeah. Like I do like the typical things. You like watch TV shows, watch movies. Obviously, I write screenplays from time to time. Just keep it like just non-basketball things about that.
For sure.
You just gotta keep again. You just gotta keep yourself like you don't want to burn out on it. Like because there are times like the end of the day, it's just like after I make like a video, it's just like because the video takes like 6 to 7 hours to make. Because between like writing the script, editing, recording, doing everything. Like making the thumbnail, like you're just tired. Like, it's just like you don't want to like really think about basketball unless like there's a game on that's important that night. Like that's the only time. Like, but like, if there's like every time, even if there is a national TV game on, like if it's not like if it's like Pacers Memphis, it's like okay, I'm not gonna watch this tonight. Like, I'm not gonna worry about that. But
it's important to take breaks. No, it's important to take breaks. And it's also important to realize, like, man, burnout is a real thing regardless of profession.
Oh, it is. Like I had that. Early on, I had that problem. Like I was uploading daily to start because I just wanted to get content out so quickly, so I could you know, build a platform and get more content. Because like more content means more views, like regardless. And I just burned out. So like I think it was last year, like the middle of February, I just took like a 2-month break and just like focused on school more fully, and then eventually I got back into a groove. Um, do you like write? Do you like about basketball?
Yeah, so pretty much. Well, not necessarily for like written, like for reading, but any of the videos that you see recorded on the school, they're mostly all written by me. So that's most of the writing I do. And yeah, man, even with that, there's a point where you can get burnt out. Like I sometimes get to the weekend and I'm already exhausted. I don't want to do anything else other than maybe just watch some TV or watch some superhero shows. So
I know.
Yeah.
That's always fun watching super shows. Yeah, like I did 2 days of Zooms of just watching the playoffs with my friends, and like at the end of the second night, I'm like, I can't. I don't think I can do it tomorrow, guys. I don't think I can do it. You just get it is because like it does take a lot. Like March Madness was always the worst for me,
Right.
especially when I was in school because I would have to find ways to sneak it in. Like, but like it's like I'm not addicted to basketball. Like when I watch March Madness, I'm like I need it so badly. And I'm willing to find creative ways to hide my phone to make sure I can watch these games.
Yep, I've been
Um,
there, man.
yeah, that was more of a high school thing. College, they don't like you can have your phone out in college. Like at least at the one I go to, and they did not care. I didn't do it a lot, but I didn't do it because I actually cared about school. I actually cared about school, but like you know what I mean. But like
Yeah, no, I totally get you, Ben.
yeah,
I used to be in my economics class in university just watching ball or whatever game it was on. Like it's like that. And
yeah,
I think to a certain extent, guys like you and me who make content, we are obsessed with
yeah.
basketball. We're addicted to it.
I know.
It's something we're addicted to. Just it
Yeah.
is what it is, right?
Yeah, and I don't like. I always say this like when I make basketball videos. Like I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be one. I don't.
Hmm.
It's like I'm just making basketball videos because I like making basketball videos, and I kind of like being the boss of myself. Like
Right.
that's why I do YouTube. It's just like I can do day jobs and stuff like that. Like I work at a golf club right now. I do events there. Just working like catering stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, but like I can handle that. Oh, yeah, I did not mean to do that. So, I didn't mean to. I can do that, but like, I suppose like my career pursuit, I want to be in charge of. Like, I want to be in charge of like how I edit it, how I write, how I record. Like, I just need to be in control of all that.
Right.
Because like it's not like I don't view like YouTube as a job pursuit. It's more of a passion pursuit than anything. Where it's like, it's more of an art than I view it as an art. It's just like I want to be
I
myself and creative. Like
I wholeheartedly agree. Like I that's one thing that's really really important to me too. And I think I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but like being a content creator doesn't limit
mhm,
you from doing
it
anything.
doesn't.
Like really anything. It's
Yeah.
called content creation. So one, you're a creator and you're creating content. Content is like the most generic thing you could think of because it
Hmm.
literally means anything.
Yeah, it
Anything is
does.
content, right? So
Like
it's the
everything is.
beautiful part of it because it is an art form. I totally agree with you. It is an art form, and to be able
Yeah.
to do it properly, it's a whole nother level, man. And also
Yeah.
like I I don't think I don't think there are basketball experts. Like even the guys we watch in the
Yeah.
playoffs, they're constantly trying to
Mm.
learn. Even basketball players, professionals,
Yeah.
they're constantly trying to learn. I think that's part of the beauty of basketball, where
Yeah, that there
you're
is
never going to
no.
learn everything. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. Like, and I think, but the thing with me in basketball has always been, when I started, it's just like meeting people.
Hmm.
It's like that's always been something for me, like meeting people. Like I've met so many people like over the course of like I've been doing this for 2 years now. I've met so many people, and like it doesn't feel like 2 years. Like I can still remember when I first started. Like, and you go back and watch those first videos, and like it just shocks you how much like you improve. Like everyone goes through that. Like whether you like write, do podcasts, make YouTube, like anything like that. Like the first time you do it to now, you're like oh man, I can't believe I
Oh
used to do
man.
that and that.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Uh,
ridiculous. If you
mhm.
ever go back and watch any of your first videos and then come back and look at it, it is
Yeah,
funny to watch. It is
it
funny
is.
to watch.
It's like, oh man, you feel like so much. But the thing is, like, I started when I was like 17, turning 18. So like, it wasn't a lot of like the voice changing stuff because like my voice hasn't changed since I was like 17, I would say. But more to like delivery, like I've become more confident in my delivery and stuff. Like I used to be so timid. Like I used to be so afraid when I would record. Like I recorded, like I sounded like I was like hiding under a bed during a horror film. Like it's bad. And I think that's always important. But
The one I mean I don't know if you necessarily need it, but the one thing I'd say is the acting classes actually
mhm.
really helped me a lot with the videos because
Oh
you
yeah.
become more comfortable with yourself, you become more okay with looking and feeling the way you are.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something I'd
Yeah.
suggest to anybody really.
Oh yeah. I took a performing arts class in middle school. Like that was the extent of like my thing. It was required, but it was fun. I think a lot of like how
Nice.
I've gotten more comfortable is having to edit my own videos and hear my own voice over and over again. Because like because like you obviously know like the voice like you hear when you talk is different from like what other people hear when they talk. So like when I do that, it's just odd to me because like your voice does sound different, like from what you hear versus like in your mind when you talk versus when you hear it back, and then
Absolutely.
hearing it back, but after like I've made like over 360 videos on my channel, so like once you hear it like 360 times, like over like how many hours of editing, like you get used to it
Mhm.
eventually, and I think that's something that always is true. And I always say this to people that want to make content, just go with it. Like I started making videos on an iPhone using the voice recording app and iMovie and made slideshows. Like just go for it. Like you don't have to worry about it looking good to start. Like
Right.
eventually, over time, once you start building your platform and you get editing softwares and stuff like that, and there's plenty of free editing softwares as well that you can use that are out there, like safe ones as well. That are safe to use. So.
Absolutely.
So like it's just always just go for it. That's all I always say. Like, and that's what my friend Rudy Sinclair told me when I first started. Because like he reached out to me before even starting. He's like, dude, just go for it. Like, just do it. And I think that's the best advice I can give anyone. Is just go for it. You're not gonna know unless you try. But all right. So I do want to ask you, like, have you ever like done like editing for your own videos, or do you like?
Yeah, man. So originally when I first started out a couple of years ago, I used to edit, record, produce pretty much all my videos. Now, obviously, with the score, we work as a team to get all that done. But
Yeah.
when I first started out, yeah, it was me pretty much doing the
Mhm.
whole thing. So I kind of I relate with what you were saying about it takes 6 7 hours to
Mhm.
write, shoot, all that. It kind of
Yeah.
takes me back to my old days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. I enjoy editing because it's just like I view it as like this art form in a way. Like it's just like it's like because like I can be creative with it. Like I've learned how to like make graphics and do all this stuff, and, like make like visuals. Um, and it's always fun to see what you can experiment with. Like I never looked up a video on how to edit. Like the one time I looked up a thing on my editing software, it was because like it wasn't working, and I had to go change like my graphics code out or something like that. Um. But other than that, like when I was watching it, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try this and this, and then I'm like, oh, I find out I can do this, and then figure I can do all this kind of stuff. Um, and it's just always been fun for me because like, you don't realize like how much work, but when you look back at like the editing bars, like and stuff, and the sound bars and the sound waves, like that's always fun. Like, man, I really just did all
Mm-hmm.
that. Um,
Right.
but you mentioned superhero shows. Like, do you have a favorite? Obviously, Invincible's out,
Mm-hmm.
been out now.
Yeah,
Um,
Invincible was great. I think I would probably say Invincible was my
yeah,
favorite of the year. Even though like I loved
that was one of my
WandaVision.
yeah. I that was my favorite. That might be my favorite show of the year.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I
Yeah,
enjoyed
I,
it a
I
lot.
agree with you. Yeah. No, Invincible
Um,
was incredible, and I had never heard of the comics before, so this
mhm,
was kind of like fresh in my brain. It was a new take to everything that I had
yeah,
seen before.
hmm
I always see on Twitter posting Injustice, not Injustice, but Young Justice clips and like
I,
old
I know
old
all
Justice League
DC.
clips of yeah old DC stuff. So me and you
I love
probably
that
watch a lot of the same stuff.
stuff.
So
I enjoy. It's funny because like I grew up a Marvel kid. Like I love Spider-Man is my favorite superhero ever. Like he still is. I grew up watching him. Like I have a bunch of Spider-Man stuff probably like down in the basement from like boxes of firsts and stuff. But I was introduced to DC like a bit like probably in high school. Like that's when I like some like because like I've always been so into like old cartoons, Scooby Doo, Flintstones, Jetsons, things like that. And somebody told me go watch the Justice League, the original one,
mhm.
because like this was around the time like the Justice League movies were being released, like before the Snyder cut,
Right.
obviously, and it wasn't very good. I'll be quite honest. So like somebody said like you want a new perspective on it, go watch like the original Justice League, original Batman, original animated, like all the anime like Batman, Superman, and Justice League. I started watching Batman and I got like a list of like how to watch it chronologically. I watched the Batman, I watched them all in order, and it just completely changed my perception on it because I'm more of a cartoon guy.
Right.
So like I shifted from like a Marvel guy to a DC guy because like again like I like movies, but like cartoons are always more my thing. They haven't
Right.
always will be.
Well,
Do
have you watched the original the original Batman show, like from the 90s?
I watched the animated one with Kevin Conroy.
Yes.
Yes, I have watched that. I watched all of them. I watched it took like a while because like I like to like kind of like I don't release these obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but like I like to write about them. Like it's kind of write like my thoughts and it's
Right.
kind of like like I forget what it's called, but like we just don't think about like what you're writing, and it's like let what's in your mind. It's like let it out on like a paper or something. Like I love doing that after every episode. So it took me almost like 3 years to get through this entire DCAU saga. Um, but I enjoy it a lot. I just think it's very well written. It's so I wish like there's stuff like that for kids now. Or when I was growing up, even
Right.
like
Yeah.
because it's a
Maybe we don't know, but yeah, it's funny because I think like there's shows like the Harley Quinn show that's awesome, but I don't know if necessarily it fits for kids.
no, it's definitely not for kids. I love that show, by the way. No, but it's just I think people get the idea that you can grow out of cartoons. Like that's not true at all. Like
It's not. Right?
you're never
Yeah.
too old for cartoons. Like no matter what,
I
right?
I think if you love cartoons, especially when you're a kid, like I
Yeah.
love them. I wish I could show you my ensemble of crazy cartoon stuff that I have on there, pop figures and all that stuff. But yeah, when you kind of just grow into it as a kid, it never leaves you, especially if you really become passionate about it. And I think
Yeah.
maybe even basketball and sports is somewhat the same thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's true. Like, and I think like basketball, obviously, that's there's stuff for adults and stuff as well. But like cartoons, it's like it is kind of good for kids. For the most part, obviously, you have adult cartoons like that; those exist as well. But like,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like for me, it's just like the ones that stick with me are the ones that like you could watch with your family. Like I could watch like the entire DCU with my dad because like there's enough adult kind of like things that that they sneak in there that like kids just wouldn't understand and like that you can get but adults would and it's just like again like it's also about production as well. Like is it well written? Like
Right.
is it are the ideas like well done? Like it's just stuff like that. And there's so much that goes into it as well that like I always have respect for. Like that's with anything though, with like movies. Like even the worst stuff. Like a lot of work does go into it. Like even with like the Justice League movie that came out. Like it was bad, but a lot of work went into it still. You gotta respect that.
For sure. Yeah, even the extended version,
Mhm.
I thought that was a little bit better.
Yeah.
Even though it's crazy that you need 4 hours to tell a
Yeah.
story, but at the same time, it was good. It was good. It was better than what the original
Yeah.
version of Justice League was for sure.
The problem with the live action stuff for me has always been they had to realize there's more DC characters than just Batman, Superman, and
Yeah.
Wonder Woman and Cyborg and Aquaman. Like, there's more than those five characters. Like, and there's always gonna be interesting characters. Like, and they have I think they have more interesting characters than Marvel, and I love Marvel stuff, but I think there's just more interesting characters. Like, those side characters that like I'm legitimately interested in when it comes to the show. Like there's stuff like they don't even have their own shows, but they're such interesting characters in their own right. Justice League Unlimited did this great. Like, like they don't have their own show, but like there are characters I wouldn't know about if it wasn't for this show. And it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, I think Young Justice does that to a certain
Yeah.
extent too. Like there's a lot of new characters that I think Blue Beetle in general was a unknown character for the most part until they started to introduce him in Young Justice, and he became a huge part of
Yeah.
it. So
And that's true with a lot of them. Like obviously, your Batman's, your Robins. Aqualad was actually like a relatively new character. But I'm pretty sure. Like it came out around the time like that show came out. Um, and then like and then the CW shows as well play a big part of it. I'm not as a big of a fan of the CW shows.
yeah, I used to be a huge fan of Arrow and Flash until it just got CWized.
CW,
Like
yeah,
it just, I feel like CW has this concurring thing just constantly. It always happens where they got to do all this emotional drama stuff where it really isn't necessarily. You could just give me a cool superhero show and
yeah,
I'll be straight with it. You know?
yeah. And they don't. And I DC, that's something like I always think DC will have is those shows are just and like the cartoon shows are always just better. Marvel is better like live action shows. Like I think Daredevil's like a significantly better show, and the Punisher is a significantly better show than what Flash and Arrow have become.
Yeah. Although I really like Titans. Titans was a great
I
show.
like that.
Yeah.
But like even like there's stuff that like, people don't like with DC. Like people don't like Teen Titans Go. And it's just like because you just have a bad perspective on that show because you're trying to compare it to the original. Like they're not trying to be better. Like they just do so much bizarre stuff in that show. I kind of love it. Like, but when it comes to TV, I think it's all about perspective. What you like, what you don't like, and like for every person, it's going to be different, no matter what. You know, some
Absolutely.
people
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
and that's true with basketball. Like
If
some
you put
people like college basketball. I'm not a big college basketball fan. I'll be honest with you. I just don't like the way it's played. I don't like a sport where coaches are the star of the show. Um, you know, like it just bothers me personally. But
absolutely, I don't like the fact that in college there is it's some tough basketball to watch. At
yeah.
times, it is
Because
some
they play
very very
zone,
yeah.
it's you know, sometimes like you risk us like especially when teams have talented players. Like this was the problem with Evan Mobley, where it's like they were playing a traditional college system with ball movement, this and that. But it's like just give them the basketball. Like just they wouldn't pass
Exactly.
them the basketball. Like stuff like that bothers me. I don't mind it, especially with, like women's basketball, because like they do like way better. It's a lot of ball. Like I love the WNBA. I'm really starting to get into it now. I've always just been like, if it's on, I'll watch it. Now I'm trying to actually start to follow it as well. Um, which I
Shout out to
always
my
do.
Liberty 4-1 baby.
No, but like yeah, I love stuff like that. Like, and there's always been like a couple like women's basketball players I've known about. Like, I knew about Brianna Stewart since she was in high school. Because she was on a sports. I always mentioned it. I knew about because she was on a Sports Illustrated Kids. They did an article on it, and I used to get that all the time. Um, so I knew about her. I knew how dominant she was in college. Like probably like one of the greatest college athletes of all time.
Right.
Sabrina, I knew about. I always knew about Sabrina. Um, this year I didn't know about Zoe Collier until around the draft time. But it's always like Paige Becker's obviously like what she's doing at
She's the next
UConn.
great one. Yep.
And it's just like I'm
Yeah.
just getting more
She's
into
the
it. And like
next
but I know
one.
Paige Becker's might be like the most publicized like female college basketball female basketball athlete at her stage. Like I don't think I can name a more popular one that came out of like high school as popular as she did. Like every like people that don't even watch women's college basketball knew about Paige Beckers because I think she was like one of the first female high school athletes on the Slam cover.
Right.
But she's incredible. Like regardless of like popularity, like she may be like a great like popular player, but like she's an even better like just skill player. Like
Oh, she's gonna change the game. I
I know.
really think she has an opportunity to change the game. Like there's a lot of women that are coming into the league that are going to shake up the NBA, WNBA. Excuse me,
WNBA,
can't
yeah.
believe it. But yeah,
I do. It's always gonna be fun, and I understand like if you like the series to NBA, like Mike, I have a friend who's like he doesn't watch the WNBA, but it's not because he doesn't like the WNBA. It's just because he doesn't like that college style ball movement. He's very just used to watching NBA basketball, and that's okay. Like if like yeah, but you have to be consistent about it. Like if you don't like watching the WNBA because of that, that means you don't like watching college basketball like
hmm
at all. Like just be consistent about it. Like, don't like I think a lot of what people drives people away and then something that's sudden is that they're women. Like that shouldn't drive you away from the sport. Like and that goes as far as like media as well. Like if you know basketball, you know basketball. I don't care who you are. Um which is something that's true. Like and I appreciate like with Toronto, like dimes and disses. Like no disses and dimes. I keep messing that up. Um, but I've been listening to them for like over a year and a half now, I want to say.
right.
And they've obviously
They
like
do a great job. Yeah, they
yeah,
do a great job. Yeah.
Molly Morrison, Katessa, like there's a bunch of them. Like I just love like what they're able to do. Because like again, at the end of the day, like people like say this and like they don't mean it. Like I don't see gender, but I don't see gender with basketball. If you know it, you know it. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a dog. Like
Right.
if you know basketball, like you do, and it doesn't matter if you're a former player, you've never played a game in your life.
Yeah.
If you know it, you know it. So
No, I agree, man. I agree, and I love the fact that it's becoming more all inclusive. To everybody, right? Anybody can pick up a basketball. Anybody can join. Anybody can talk about it. Anybody can have the conversation. As long as you are articulate enough, as long as you can kind of speak on something, as long as you have something to contribute to the game, I think that's the most beautiful part of sports in general. Is that there's a lot of ways that you can contribute to it. So
yeah, that is true, and you're gonna have your good, you're gonna have your bads with all of it, and that's with anything though. Like
absolutely, yeah,
it's like that's with everything though. You're gonna have people that you do like, you're gonna have people that you don't like with this stuff. And you just got to get over. Sometimes you just got to get over it. Like, not
yeah.
everyone's gonna agree with you. Like that's always something. Like I
It's the
outgrew
it's
that at a young age. Like, I know that everyone has an opinion. Like, yeah, they may not have a lot to validate that opinion, but it's still their opinion. Like, you're not gonna
right.
change it. Like, people always like say like when they talk about like haters and stuff, like haters are so set in their mindset, in my opinion, that like there's no point in trying to change them guys. Like,
Exactly. No, so sometimes you cannot change the opinion of someone who is
mhm.
just not going to give you the time of day. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's going to come down to people who you do receive good criticism from, who are in your corner, so
Hmm.
to speak, and know how to support you that way, right?
Yeah. No, no, I just read something. That's all.
Yeah, you're good.
You're good.
No, I was just saying, like, realistically, it's the support is a huge part, and we
Hmm.
talked about content creation a little bit earlier, but I think people who are content creators, um, it's tough because especially at the beginning, you're putting out videos, you're putting out videos, you're putting
Hmm.
out videos, and you don't necessarily get that same love and appreciation as you thought you
Oh,
would. And there's this constant grind to be able to produce that quality, produce that content without getting the likes, the appreciation, the shares and whatnot. But at some
yeah.
point, it starts to click when you create a community, when you create an engagement, when you become authentic with it. It really changes something for you. And I think that's the coolest part, where you see the process of becoming a content creator.
Hmm.
The process, I think, is something I've had a lot too. Appreciating the process of getting to the point where you want to be in your life, and appreciating the
Hmm.
transition, so to speak. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like obviously I'm going for my communications degree right now, but
Mm-hmm.
like finding out that like basketball YouTube is what I want to do, like that was a big moment for me. Like realizing like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life now. Like now, how do I make this a reality? That's always been something for me. Um, I even like I have always enjoyed like again I mentioned I've enjoyed just meeting people. Like I was a kid that grew up thinking online friends are stupid. Now I have like 1,000 online friends, people I know. Like definitely, like I always say, like I always use like my follow count as like I've met over 1,000, but like like some people just follow the follow, but like those people like you legitimately can connect with, like, and it's definitely over 100 at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like like there's like some like that I know, like obviously like Jacob, big YouTuber. Mojo's relatively big, but like some of my best friends I've met online are small creators, like and like people that have like less than 1,000 subs, like Makai Bruce. I love Makai Bruce. Like that guy works
Kai's
so
my
hard.
guy.
He works so hard. He's one of the hardest workers I know, and I can't wait. Like, cause like when it pays off for him, I'm gonna be so happy because it is gonna pay off because he works too hard
Absolutely.
for it to not. But like, like it's not about the sub count for me. Like that's the thing. Like I have like 4,000 subs, but it's like that doesn't matter to me. Like I was gonna make videos if I had 0 subs. Like it's just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I always say this, like if you have a passion for it, you can do it. Like if you
Absolutely.
have a
Yeah.
passion, you have a drive to be something, you can become that. Like and not all the times like become like saying like obviously like there's unrealistic things like athletically, but like mine is sports really. You could be like, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes with most of life. Maybe not athletics. Athletics is
yeah.
probably one of the only things where you need to have some God-given talents. But I think for a lot of things, grinding, working, consistently trying to do that, it ends up paying off. And
Mhm.
also picking something that you want to be good at from the get-go, like saying, okay, I'm going to be dedicated to
Mhm.
this and do this. And I think that decision right there does
Mhm.
pay off.
Yeah.
Making a decision pays off.
Mhm. Yeah, and it is. Like also being dedicated. If you love something, you're going to be dedicated to it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like it says with the athletes, the athletes, it's just like, like the ones that like love basketball, but like they may not love basketball. They may not be fully committed to it, or any
Right.
sport. Like you can tell, like no matter how talented they are, they're not going to be as good as the guy that works his ass off every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I always bring up Jalen Brown and Andrew Wiggins. Like I don't think Andrew Wiggins is like doesn't love basketball, and I don't think he has a bad work ethic, which I think is a horrible narrative around him. Because the guy shows up in shape every year. If he didn't care, he wouldn't show up in peak physical shape every year. Because he does.
Exactly.
And he's still the same freak athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like, I think he does. He loves the game, but like, does he love it enough to want to like improve, or is
Well,
he just
I think
satisfied with being, a decent player?
right.
Like,
I actually have a story about this.
mhm,
Not necessarily about Wiggins, but I in elementary school, we could try out for the basketball team at grade 5, right?
mhm,
And there was this guy in my grade. His name was Ryan Craig, right?
mhm.
I doubt Ryan Craig is listening to this right now, but shout out Ryan Craig if you're listening. I don't even know what Ryan Craig is doing right now, but shout out to you. But anyway, so there was this
Yeah.
guy named Ryan Craig, right? And we only were allowed 3 grade 5 players on the
Mhm,
team, right? He didn't even have a joy for basketball, right? He didn't really like it. He was just
mhm,
like, dude, I'm just good. I'm gonna try out. He tried out, obviously made the team. He was probably one of the best players in the grade. And when I asked him, I'm like, dude, like, why did you try out? And he said it's because at the end of the day, he's good enough at doing it, so
mhm.
might as well. But he
Yeah.
doesn't really have a drive and a passion for it. And I think there's so many people like that where they're just good enough to be able to do it, where they don't necessarily need to
Mhm.
have that same drive, that same mentality, right?
Mhm.
That same
Yeah,
motivation.
I can relate to that because that was me with track. I was, um, I was, so in middle school, like I was just a naturally good runner. Um, I ran cross country, I ran track, pretty decent at both. And then I ran cross country my freshman year. I actually somewhat enjoyed it. And then I signed up for track. I wanted to do sprinting. I sprinted in middle school, but my cross country coach all but basically forced my hand into doing distance, and I hated it. I could do it, but I hate it. And then I quit and never did it. Never wanted to do track again. But I've always just been a somewhat naturally good runner. Like I'm my personal best mile is 5 minutes 30 seconds. Uh, Now I would say I run a mile in like 6 minutes. But
Yeah. Okay.
like back then I could run like 5 minutes 30 seconds.
Hey, that's better than what I can do, man.
But like I think after my freshman year, I kind of realized I'm kind of just doing this. Like, the coach was just so bad that like I kind of thought I was going to quit anyways. But also because like, and that's also something that's horrible for like a lot of kids. It's like, like I hate when a coach ruins a sport for a kid. In high school, but like also like I kind of realized I was doing this because I could, not because I wanted to, and I didn't want to take up some kid's spot on a team like that wanted it at that point because I was just doing it because I could,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I wasn't
look,
having fun.
Ryan Craig was a little bit different. He wanted to make it because he didn't want another kid to make the team. He wanted to make it because he wanted someone else to not make it. And hey, I was that kid in grade 5, but I worked my ass off and tried to make it in grade
Mhm.
6, and then I dominated. So
Yeah.
I remember that was a fun little process for me. I'll always remember that because it I think it went to show like some people are more advantaged in certain situations, and some people are at a disadvantage, right? You
Mhm.
gotta
Yeah.
sometimes work harder, right?
And I would never had interest in high school to play sports. I played basketball. I did runs. I played rec leagues, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I probably averaged because they did keep score in rec leagues and stuff. I probably averaged like 10, 3, and 3. Like
Nice,
on my
solid.
rookie Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. But I played that. But I played that because it was fun. Like I just had so much fun doing that. Like I always would describe my game as like a watered down version of Tyrese Halliburton. Like I wasn't a great ball handler. I could dribble, but I wasn't great at it. I didn't really create separation. I scored like it was off cuts and screens and stuff like that. But like I love passing the basketball. It's my favorite thing to do. Like I love getting guys open, stuff like that. It's just my favorite part of the game. It is like just getting other guys involved. It's just a lot of fun. Like, I think if I could go back, I would have tried it out for high school and stuff, or trained. But like, I didn't know I loved basketball
Right.
as much as I did until like I was 17. Like, I didn't realize like this is like I didn't realize I loved it this much. Like,
Yeah. No, when I was a kid, there were two things I wanted to be. One was unrealistic, and one was even more unrealistic. I wanted to be a script writer, and I wanted to be an NBA player. So you can guess which one is more realistic. But yeah,
um,
both were wild aspirations.
yeah, um, yeah, and like obviously I had a film stage of my life as well. Like, I love watching movies, reviewing movies, stuff like that. Watching other movie reviews. I don't like doing that anymore because like it's just kind of like you're watching someone else's opinion on something that's like very subjective. Like basketball, I think you can get away with it just because like there's like concrete evidence. Like there's nothing concrete you can say about a movie.
Right.
Like it's all based off your perspective. So I don't want to start stuff anymore. Growing up, I wanted to be a pilot, or in that was like obviously every kid in the world wanted to be a pilot at some point in their life. Um, but I wanted to. I think when I started high school, I wanted to go be an aerospace engineer, and then I kind of fell out of that because I realized I don't really like science at all.
Right.
Um, I don't say I
Yep.
hate science. Like I enjoy like, neurology and stuff,
Right.
which is why I talk with like Evan Chichilla, Easy Hoops. He's a neurologist. Like I like talking with him because he is like he's a neurology major.
Right.
It's like a PhD in that, so that's always fun. But like I went through most of my high school like not knowing what I wanted to do. Like I kind of just felt stuck, and then eventually I found this.
That's
Um,
amazing, man. That's
yeah.
amazing. I never had. I'll tell you this. I enjoy science from afar.
Mhm.
I'll say
I
that.
enjoy like space
I
stuff.
enjoy the practical science, but right. Yeah, I think that's the sci-fi in you, man. That's if you
Yeah.
like superheroes, I think it kind of coincides. You like sci-fi, you like space. That's just how
Mhm.
it goes, man. That's just how it
Yeah.
goes. I'm personally a big fan of all that too. I think it's just the
Mhm.
wonder, the imagination of it all, right?
Yeah. I enjoy that stuff. I didn't enjoy like the biology and the chemistry. Like that just was drag for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, only time in my life I ever got lower than a B minus in the class was chemistry. Only time in my life. But I do enjoy, you know, I think again like well I love basketball obviously. And this is it. Like I just enjoy the journey of it all. Like how I got to here. Because there's ups and downs in everyone's journey. It's gonna be moments like you're on top. There's gonna be moments like you're down. And it's just been a whole process. I enjoy like again meeting people like you, meeting people like Lobel,
For sure.
meeting Rusty, meeting Moja, meeting Rudy. Obviously, is probably the biggest one because like I don't if I don't meet Rudy, I don't meet probably like any of you guys because
Right.
he's the one that kind of like said the scope for it and kind of convinced me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But and again, like I always say for the people that are watching that have aspirations to do stuff like this, just go for it, man. Like that's you don't you're not gonna there's nothing against you for at least trying.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not gonna know there's going to be a bunch of what ifs in your life. You're not going to know what's on the other side of that door unless you open the door, unless you try. So I agree.
Yeah. I think that we should start wrapping it up soon because we're getting close to the hour 15-minute mark, we should say. But you have any playoff predictions? Like
Well, I'm watching the Bucks absolutely dismantle the Miami Heat right now. I've said this, and I think I'll stick with my guns. I still think the Bucks are coming out of the East. I really do think this is the year that they finally get over the hump. I think this is the year Giannis finally gets over the hump, and that's my prediction.
He's been awesome so far. 15, 7, and 5. I'm probably gonna watch that game after this. I think my big prediction has been, and this was for no matter who got the 8th seed in the West, was I think that I think both of those teams had a good chance to push Utah in the 7-game series, even with Donovan Mitchell coming back, because more Golden State just because they don't have anyone that can stop Curry. Where you have guys that can stop John Morant. But I think it's going to be a lot closer. I just don't buy into Utah, and that's like bias aside of me not liking Utah as a team. But I still buy into that. I still it's just hard when you only have one go-to scoring star on your team. It's just hard for me to buy into you because if you look at throughout NBA history, you have multiple guys that you could go to that could give you 20 a night, LeBron and AD in LA. Lowry, even Siakam to an extent, and definitely Kawhi in Toronto. KD, Clay, and Steph in Golden State. LeBron and Kyrie, LeBron and Wade. I think the only example is Duke in that Mavericks team. And even then, Terry could give you 18.
Terry could give you 20. Jason Kidd could give you some. Sean Marion could give you something. Yeah, you're right.
And but even that, it was definitely Duke. Duke carried that team. They don't make the finals without him. They don't win without him. But Kobe and Shaq, obviously, the Pistons, people forget Rasheed, Billups, even Rep and Tayson, there's a bunch of teams. But I want to thank you again for having you on. You were one of the first ones to reach out to me when I announced I was doing this. I've enjoyed this. Maybe I'll probably have to have you on again sometime.
For sure, man. Yeah.
Again, make sure you go follow the Score on Twitter. Make sure you go follow them. Subscribe to them on YouTube. Make sure you go follow us on Twitter as well. I'll put everything in the description below and in the pinned comment. Is there anything else you want to shout out? Or?
No, man. I want to shout out you for doing this. This was awesome. Yeah. It was great to finally put a face to the voice and the name, man. It was great, and man, just let me know if you need me to hop on again. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, I would do it. Again, thanks for coming on. Again, go check out his stuff. They all do awesome stuff. The Score. You're also very someone that's fun to follow on Twitter.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. If you want again, go follow his Twitter. Go follow my Twitter. I'm way different on Twitter, by the way. Just a fair warning than I am on videos and stuff. So that's your fair warning there. But again, subscribe to the channel. Check out all the stuff. Everything will be in the description below that you should follow, including in Google Sheets with a bunch of other basketball content creators that I have. You can go check that out as well. But with that being said, guys, have a nice night.